Now, John Galligan, the Fort Hood shooter Nidal Hasan's attorney. Though Hasan defended himself at his 2013 military trial, Mr. Galligan has served as Hasan's attorney for nearly 5 years. And you, sir, are the man to whom this letter in its original form was handed with instructions that you deliver it to the Pope, to your sister, and to our own Catherine Herridge. And I ask you, having read the full thing, whether this makes clear, as so many of his communications have, that this was not a case of workplace violence, but this was jihad, plain and simple.
Well, I don't know where they come up with the term workplace violence. I've been in the Army 30 years, been in the practice of law for almost 35 years. Workplace violence is not the crime for which he was charged. It is not a punishable offense under the UCMJ, and it's certainly not an aggravating factor that would warrant the death penalty. Nidal Hasan was charged with mass murder.
Not terrorism.
No. They could have elected to have proceeded along that line, but the government chose not to. Although during the course of the trial, a lot of the evidence that they presented seemed to suggest, or they wanted the jury to believe, that there was a terrorist base.
You've met with him repeatedly. You've represented him. You've been through this case from the beginning.
Correct.
Is there any doubt in your mind? I mean, let me ask you it this way. Finish this sentence. He murdered 13 people and shot 30 others because he believed,
by his acts, that he would be saving the lives of women and children in foreign land, Muslims, who, in his opinion, were subject to being killed because of American policies.
And that's why he wanted to argue that the reason he did it was in defense of others, which the judge shut down. But is there any doubt in your mind that this is somebody who believes in the jihad? He believed that his weird version of Islam mandated that he do this.
I believe you've correctly stated what his...
Okay, and yet the judge shut that down. And the question I have for you is, why then, to this day, does the government deny that this was jihad, that it was terror?
I simply can't answer that. I mean, I've had discussions with the plaintiff's attorney in the civil case, and he and I are in agreement about most of the facts. You know, there were two trials at stake. There was a trial involving Nidal Hasan. There was very little dispute about the facts in that case. Also on trial was the Army. And I remain convinced to this day that had Nidal Hasan been killed, the Army's spin on this whole incident would have been completely different.
Because you say the Army was warned, that they were warned repeatedly that he was becoming more radicalized.
And that's not just me. Senators Collins and Lieberman made that conclusion in their report. The Army, for whatever reason, has decided they want to keep this under the guise of workplace violence, but at the same time they want to pursue the death penalty. And both of those are big mistakes.
To this day, you say he's not as interested in legal briefs as he is in asking you for what kind of documents?
Well, religious documents, books dealing with proper foods to eat, halal foods, commentators on the Quran, and he's encouraged that I share a lot of this with, my sister.
Right, your sister who's a nun.
That's correct.
Okay, this is very interesting. Now he has been sentenced to death.
Correct.
Will that likely be carried out?
I don't believe it will.
Why?
Well, the Army's got a terrible track record when it comes to the death penalty. Approximately 80% reversal rate. Since the date of these tragic events in November of 2009, already 3 people have come off death row at Leavenworth. Most of them have had their sentences changed to life without the possibility of parole. The last Fort Hood case, where there was a death penalty involved a soldier named Loving. He's been on death row for over 23 years. If
he were to let his appeals play out and they were all denied, and the conviction and the death sentence stood, how would it have to happen?
It would have to be approved by the president.
The president himself would have to personally approve of it.
Correct. And like I say, Loving's been on death row for 23 years, and I would venture to guess that if we were to submit any of the current cases, except for Nidal's, which is not ripe for the presidential decision, I don't think the president would.
Final question. Has he expressed any remorse to you, ever?
I can't say that it was remorse in the traditional sense. I think he feels that he didn't accomplish what he believed was his
so remorse
intent.
That he didn't kill more people.
Well, know that he wasn't more effective in getting people to believe that in his trial. I think he really was hoping he'd be able to demonstrate that there are millions of people out there in the world who, like him, believe that American policy is improper and that life under Islamic law, Sharia law, is more preferable to what he currently has.
It's incredible. John, I thank you for being here. All the best to you.
Well, I hope Fox News continues to follow this case. You've done a good job on it so far.
Thank you, sir. And my best to the sister.